Alright, what's up guys, it's your boy McKinley Crain here. Today I'm going to be doing my spoiler-free movie review of the sequel to the 2018 Sony Marvel film Venom, which is Venom Let There Be Carnage. Now let's get into it. So I just saw this movie like 2 hours ago at the theater, and it was way better than the original in my opinion. Although the original was a great movie, this one was even more great. I had high expectations for this movie, and they were all delivered. Before I get into a lot of the story, I'm just gonna say this this movie. One thing that I noticed about it is it feels like a sequel, and that's not in a bad way. But I could very much tell that the makers of this movie understood that it was a sequel, because there's not a lot of characterization in this movie, and there's not a lot needed, honestly. The makers of this movie, the writers of this movie, are very aware that, they explained a whole lot of Eddie Brock and Venom's characterization in the first Venom film, and they are very aware that a lot of the people that are seeing this movie are people who have seen the original and are fans of the original. This movie also kind of has that Halloween vibe to it. I'm not saying it's a horror movie. It has some horror elements in there, but it just kind of feels like a Halloween movie. Because, one, today is October 1st. Two, there are just so many locations that look so darn they be looking like stereotypical Halloween haunted asylums, you know what I'm saying? And it just kind of feels like a Halloween movie. It's not technically a Halloween movie, but it feels like it. And yes, this film does once again center on, just like the original, center on Eddie Brock and Venom. And this time it kind of focuses more on them. More on, how the ways and the way how these two characters interact with each other, which leads to some great and comedic dialogue that I found very funny, and very clever, and very witty. And it's a great bromance, and this is honestly kind of the Adam and Vinny, the Venom and Eddie, duo. Kind of makes this feel like a buddy cop movie almost, but it's not. You know what I'm saying? But it's still a buddy movie, and it works. A lot of the humor in this movie is dark humor, so it's not going to be for everyone. If you don't like dark humor, you're probably not going to like the humor in this movie very much. The humor in this movie wasn't as dark as some of the humor in the most recent Suicide Squad movie was. That movie had some dark humor, some super dark humor at times. That worked, of course. And the dark humor in this movie worked as well. Did it work as well as the dark humor in the Suicide Squad movie? Well, no, because the Suicide Squad is just, a better movie. Just a better movie overall. But Venom Let There Be Carnage is still a perfect movie, just like the Suicide Squad and just like the original Venom movie. This movie is, like I said, a vast improvement over the original, and the critics seem to think so too. Most of them like it. The audience definitely likes it, and it was the same way for the last Venom movie. But, the critics, they crapped all over the original Venom movie. But, most of them seem to like the sequel. I, for one, love the sequel. And I think it's a very fun movie with a lot of just great humor and, kind of like, just really, really clever Easter eggs, kind of, that you really wouldn't expect. That are just, really fun and, open opportunities and questions and just, it's just what Easter eggs usually do, but, it's what happens in this movie with Easter eggs, and, it works. It works and it's great. And I was very impressed with the CG in this movie, and the cinematography overall was very impressive. And the action was very impressive. There are a lot of great action scenes, a lot of which involve Venom fighting Carnage. Who, in my opinion, is a much better villain than Riot was. He is a much more interesting villain. And I think a lot of other people seem to agree with me on that. We do get some backstory. We do get some of his backstory. We don't get a lot of his backstory, though. Like, we don't get a lot of Cletus Cassidy's backstory, though. And honestly, we don't really need to. We got enough of it. We got just the right amount for this movie. It wouldn't hurt anything if there was any more. If they had like added a little more backstory, but it's fine just the way it is. We don't really know a lot about the Carnage symbiote itself, but that's not a problem. We didn't really need to. The explanation for why, if you're a Marvel fan, you should know this. The explanation for why Carnage, the symbiote, hated Venom in the first place is because, if you're a Marvel fan, you should know this. Most of the time, symbiotes in the Marvel Universe hate each other. They hate each other. They don't like each other. And, they want to, they see each other as, a threat, and they want to battle each other to the death and stuff. They get along sometimes, but most of the time, those creatures, they don't like each other. And I had a blast watching this movie, and it felt shorter than I expected. I knew how long it was going in. More like how short it was, because the movie's only like an hour and 30 minutes by itself. If you add on, like, you know, the credits and the mid-credits scene, it's an hour and 37 minutes. Which is still pretty short, but, you know, technically the movie's only an hour and 30 minutes. I was surprised how fast, like, it went. This movie is mostly very fast-paced. The pacing is just awesome in this movie. You know, it's towards the beginning, it's kind of slow, but, you know, that's not a bad thing. It needed to be slow. And it needed, you know, to slow down at times. And it did. But, you know, it didn't need to slow down, like, for most of the time, if that makes sense, for most of the movie, and it didn't. And it was a fast-paced, just awesome, entertaining movie, and I wasn't bored once while watching this movie. I wasn't bored once. And when it ended, I was just like, I technically knew it was going to end, but I couldn't believe how fast time went by, because, you know, I'm not used to, like, Marvel movies being that short, or just movies in general being that short. So I was just like, oh my gosh, this is a short movie. Speaking of the post-credit scene, I'm not going to tell you what happens in there because spoilers, but I can say it's one of the best post-credit scenes of all time, in my opinion. And I know I'm not the first person to say this. Other people have said this. Other people on the internet have said this. But the post-credit scene itself is worth the admission price. And the post-credit scene had already been spoiled for me. Many times. It's like the internet was just begging for it to be spoiled for me, regardless of whether or not it was spoiled or not spoiled, or whether or not it would have not been spoiled for me. It's still perfect, and it was still a very satisfying mid-credit scene that was awesome and changes Marvel movies, not only Marvel movies, but in my opinion, just movies forever. Breaks boundaries. You'll see what I'm talking about when you see the movie and you see the mid-credit scene. Anyway, I had a blast, and I can't wait for Venom 3 to come out. I know they're probably going to make a third one, and I can't wait. Anyway, I'm going to give this movie a 100% out of 100%, which is the equivalent of an A+. Like, subscribe, join the notification squad. I will return.